Okay.
Now
Yeah.
people don't even know what you're laughing at, AP.
No. Before we go live, I wanted to quickly say that yesterday's stream was really good. The Matrix, they called me. They said they're very happy with the results. They sent me a
Yes.
huge check because of the
Yes. Thank you, Matrix.
yeah.
Yep. When you expose sex trafficking, the Matrix always has your back.
Yes.
Hey, it's interesting. Miss Vicky May is over here talking about Mormon stories, and we're going to have a little bit to say here about Mormonism here very soon. The Book of Mormon. In fact, we may have Shabir Ali very soon converting to Mormonism. Wouldn't that be interesting? Oh, I forgot to say, TikTok, time to rock.
By the way, I have to say about Mormonism. Has there ever been a book that is?
Why did you get like 4 inches taller?
I don't know. Has there ever been a book as eloquent and as wonderful as the Book of Mormon? Like,
no,
probably not. Nobody can write a book that is better, more eloquent than that, which in itself is a miracle and is showing that Mormonism is true.
Hey, you know that dumb kid Wyatt who always comments is like 12 years old. He's actually an ex-Mormon.
Oh, really?
So he would have to wait like another 6 years before he's even like an elder.
Oh,
but yeah, he's an ex-Mormon. He's about to convert back to Mormonism because we're going to have a powerful argument for Mormonism in this video. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we are here to talk about the numerical miracles. We've been witnessing the death of a number of arguments, and these were all the most popular arguments like 20 to 30 years ago. In fact, so I was in prison when I first start interacting with Islam, and the first detailed, in-depth argument someone gave me was the imam there. I've mentioned before, he showed me like an hour-long video on the scientific miracles of the Quran. That was an argument that was invented in the 1970s and which, Ali Dawah has said is now debunked, and Hamza Tsortsis has said is debunked. But this was the argument I was given in the 90s. The other two I remember most clearly was the most popular one of like the Muslims at large was the miracle of the number 19. So if you just talk to an average like Muslim, they kept throwing, there's so many 19s, there's 19s everywhere, there's this code in this, so it's this Quran code. And then as far as tracts they were giving me, the one I remember is there was an entire pamphlet on Muhammad in Song of Solomon 5:16. So that was the first example of Muhammad in the Bible that I was given. So these are the arguments, and they're all completely bogus. And any honest person will acknowledge that these are completely bogus arguments at this point, except for the number 19 and Shabir Ali. He seems to sincerely believe that this is a good argument. And but with the numerical miracles and the scientific miracles, Muslims have a little bit more freedom to reject these arguments or say they've been debunked because they were just invented in the 1970s. They just came up with this stuff. It spread for a while. They won some converts who were too gullible to look into things. And now they're acknowledging that these arguments have been debunked. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. The argument from Muhammad in the Bible is probably worse than the other arguments, but it's harder to give up because it actually comes from the Quran. So it's not something they made up in the 1970s. They came up with particular versions like Muhammad in Song of Solomon that are recent developments, but it's going to be harder for them to give that one up. Anyway, so we're going to go and look at this. We're going to watch Shabir Ali give a presentation on this amazing miracle of the number 19. And then we're going to look at Sheikh Yasir Qadhi responding to the argument and giving his thoughts on the argument. And if we have time, I don't know that we will, because Sheikh Yasir Qadhi is going to be fine, and we've got some of our own responses. And if we have time, we'll look at Sheikh Asim al-Hakim also responding to this argument. But AP, did you ever? It's kind of a weird argument, and it was invented in America. So did you ever run into this when you were still a Muslim?
I heard of it when I was a Muslim. I haven't really. I mean, it wasn't really. I didn't get exposed to the actual argument as a whole, but I did hear numerical or mathematical miracles about the Quran and stuff like that before, and I never paid any attention to that kind of stuff because it just didn't make sense to me that such a miracle would exist and that this would be somehow the proof of the truth of the religion. It kind of seemed absurd to me, the idea. But I was aware of the miracles somewhat, and I was also aware of one of the current proponents of the number 19, who is Edip Yüksel, who is from Turkey and who went to America and became a student of Rashid Khalifa, who initially came up with this whole number 19 argument. But I learned more about that whole argument after I left Islam, to be honest.
And it seems to be an argument that's going to appeal to certain kinds of people, because you even have people doing that with like the Bible and other books. Like, it seems like, whereas me, I'm like, what? Come on, I'm not interested. Possible that there could be code somewhere, but not terribly interested as an area of serious investigation. But we also have Thaddeus here, and Thaddeus, I've heard that you are, how do I put this, a math nerd. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is 100% correct. My undergraduate degree is in mathematics, specifically actuarial science. Actuaries set
Don't make up
rate
words.
tables.
Go ahead. Don't make
Right,
up. Don't
actuaries
make
set
up
rate
words.
tables.
Don't make up words to sound smart. But go ahead.
Actuaries set rate tables for insurance companies, so it's all about mathematics. So yes, I'm very much a math nerd. I'm even wearing a math nerd shirt here. Got a funny equation on it. I wore this shirt to take my actuarial tests in. So
All right. Well, this has been the nerdiest thing we've ever heard in the history of live streaming.
yeah, that's probably true. Although you did look at Mike Winger's clips, so
Oh yeah, I can't
it's
forget Mike Winger.
close between Mike Winger and I as to who is the most nerdy. But
No,
today I'm just
you
here
can't.
to defend the inspiration of the Book of Mormon. So
You can't mess with the king there, Thaddeus. You can. You have a goal, but hard to mess with the king. All right, so we are going to. It's kind of a longer clip than I wanted to go through. I think it's like 8.5, 9 minutes of Shabir Ali. Anytime you guys want to jump in with something, let me know. But other than that, I didn't want to make the clip too short because I didn't want Shabir's fans to say that we didn't hear him out. Now, the clip does go on, but we've got enough of it to where he can give a bunch of examples of this sort of thing. So there are different claims of mathematical miracles in the Quran. The most famous over the past several decades has been this number 19, and Shabir is going to give the argument for us. Are we ready to go? We have anything else?
Whenever I hear Shabir Ali, I have to think of Farid saying, "Shabir Ali is a punk."
Oh yeah. What's funny, because if you're just talking about, like, who you could get along with, Shabir's on the pretty nice end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
All right, so let me go ahead and get this clip of Shabir up. Don't want this Blazing Saddles. I was trying for you guys. The rest of you weren't here, but when it was me and AP and Thaddeus, and I was trying to get the video clips in the system here, I accidentally brought in the campfire scene from Blazing Saddles, which you can watch on your own if you're interested in something hilarious. All right, here we go. Shabir Ali on the number 19.
So we're continuing our series on Quran, is it really the word of God, mathematical miracles, and today we're focusing on the number 19. Now, how does this relate to probability theory?
Well, sometimes we see things falling into place and we say, okay, well, it just happened by coincidence. And a lot of times that is exactly what it is, just a simple coincidence. But what we know from probability theory is that, yes, things may happen, fall into place by coincidence, but to have a series of such coincidences is actually very rare. Let's say, for example, I flip a coin. Now it's either heads or tails coming up, right? And the chance of it being heads is 1/2 or 50%, because there is one chance out of two possibilities. It's either heads or tails, and I'm looking for that one possibility out of the two. Now, to get heads twice in a row is actually 1/2 times 1/2, which is 1/4.
Okay.
In other words, 1 out of 4, because if you flip it 2 times, there are 4 different outcomes which are possible, and you need heads each time. So you need actually one. You need one possibility out of the 4 that could occur.
Thaddeus, now what you're doing sounds like numbers and like statistics and so on, did you deal with probability? Because that's actually one of the areas in philosophy, because my dissertation was on the Bayesian argument from evil. So Bayesianism deals with, it's a set of ideas drawn from Bayes' theorem. So it's a lot to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, some
Mm-hmm.
people have said, some people have said that their favorite video that I made was a video where I was breaking down Bayes' theorem for my kids when they were like 6 and 8, but I made it so that they could understand. But do you deal with probability?
Oh yeah, definitely. The first actuarial test is actually called the probability test, or p-test. They usually just call it. But
That's not what not what me and AP I know as a AP as a
yeah,
p-test.
that might be a different p-test.
Just kidding.
But yeah, absolutely. All of that's a fundamental principle of anything an actuary is doing, is they're trying to predict how likely it is for you to get in a car accident, or how likely it is for your home to get hit by a natural disaster. So yeah, it's all about probability.
We're getting probability here. Aisha was 1/4 the age of a woman when Muhammad married her. Oh boy. Yeah. So Shabir, here's the thing. Shabir Ali is breaking down probability. So for anyone who doesn't, the basics of, it's not even really probability theory. It's just basic probability. Probability theory deals with what actually is what is probability referred to and stuff. He's just doing basic probability, but doing basic probabilities, it's the numbers, it's the number of desired or specified outcomes over the total possible outcomes. So if you flip a coin, there are 2 possible outcomes. If you're looking for one, if you're looking for heads, it's 1 desired outcome over the total number of outcomes, which is 2. So 1 and 2. And then you can, in a series, you can multiply the things. So Shabir Ali is going to break things down like that, but I still have no clue what this has to do with the number 19 that he's dealing with later, because he's not multiplying probably. So I don't even know. But what?
Nothing. I'm just saying this is just the most unrelatable and most boring thing I've heard in my entire life.
Yes.
So it's probably not a good way to win people over.
Yeah, I start to think like why people will cling to arguments. It's like this doesn't attract the same amount of attention or desire to respond to it as certain other arguments do. And so it's more under the radar. And so less people attack it. And therefore, it's easier to cling to. Let's see.
Meaning both are heads. And if you do it 3 times in a row, the probability of getting heads on each spin is actually 1 out of 8 now. So your chances, if you flip it 3 times, now there are 8 different outcomes which are possible, and you want one specific outcome that you have heads on each one of them. So the more you flip, the lesser a chance you have that you have your desired outcome. Now, that's with a coin where there are 2 possibilities, either head or tails, right? If you go to use a die which has 6 faces, the probability of getting one particular face, let's say you want the number 5 for some reason. Most people like to get 6, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
But let's say you wanted to get the number 5 for some reason. Now, to get that number 5, you roll the die. The probability of getting that 5 is 1 out of 6. Because there's 6 different outcomes you can get, number 1, 2, 3, all the way to 6, but you want that specific one. It's 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6. But if you want to get the 5 on 2 throws in a row, then now it is 1 out of 36. It's because now you have 36 different outcomes, and you want 5 on each one of them.
That's true.
Okay, so that's one specific outcome out of the 36. And if you want 3 throws and 5 on each one of them, it's 1 out of 216.
Your math is really good.
Well, I mean, I've done this before.
Yeah.
So you see now the chance of getting your desired result is becoming slimmer and slimmer if you're doing a number of them in a row. Now, if we let's suppose we're working with a die which has 6 faces, right? Imagine a die that has 19 faces. It's hard to imagine because to get them all even. But now, just to see.
This sucks because he's sort of building up to the number 19. But again, I didn't want to leave this intro out in case someone was going to come along later and but you didn't understand his breakdown of probability and why the number 19 is so amazing. So we'll hear him out.
Numbers. So to get the one desired number, if you're working with a die that has 19 faces, is 1 out of 19. And if you do it 2 times in a row and you want to get the same number in each roll, then it's 1 out of 361.
Which would be very
times
unlikely.
19. It's very, very, very unlikely. So now,
So notice he's comparing what he does with the Quran to what are the odds that, you know, if you had a 19-sided die, you just kept rolling it and just kept getting the number 19 over and over and over again. We'd have to say it's 1 in 19 times 1 in 19 times 1 in 19 times all these 1 in 19s. It's just going to be astronomically improbable, except that's why I said this has nothing to do with what he does with the number 19. All right, Thaddeus is going to break this down for us soon, but let's hear some more Shabir.
we see that there are certain things in the Quran that work out to either 19 or a multiple of 19. And to get one of these numbers coming out like this, the probability of each one is 1 out of 19. And to get 2 in a row is like 1 out of 361. 19 times 19. So this is very rare, and to find this in the Quran would indicate to us that the divine hand is behind the Quran, and it is God's mind who put the Quran to be the way it is. It's not by human invention.
And someone obviously did this research, right, in this area of focus, so can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah.
Here we get to Rashad Khalifa.
Oh, yeah.
Who was murdered by his fellow Muslims after he took this argument to an extreme and started predicting the day the world would end and declared himself to be the prophet of our time to America or something like that, and rejected the hadith and had to take some verses out of the Quran in order to get his mathematics to line up, and they killed him for it.
Well, and not only that, the 19 was crucial to his own claim of prophethood. So he combined things with 19 plus his name to prove, right, that he's a prophet.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I never researched much about that guy. That's funny.
You know what's weird? Actually, we could use him as an example. I was thinking about doing this with Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, but there's the argument that no Muslims use. In fact, I don't even know a Muslim who used this argument, and it's one of the 2 or 3 top arguments in the Quran for why you should believe in Muhammad. So the arguments that you actually have in the Quran for why you should believe in Muhammad, you've got the argument from literary excellence, like it's so amazingly written, it must come from God. You've got the argument from biblical prophecy, which isn't even referred to that much, but even more than that one, you have this argument that talking to the Jews and Christians, hey, Muhammad is affirming your scriptures, therefore you should affirm him as a prophet. Muhammad is affirming your scriptures, therefore you should affirm him as a prophet. Now, that's so ridiculously insane. But notice, you could say, oh, okay, Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, who founded the Ahmadis, well, he affirmed the Quran, therefore you should affirm him as the promised Messiah, what he claimed to be. Rashad Khalifa affirmed the Quran, therefore you Muslims should affirm him as a prophet. What you would say is, no, but he's contradicting Islam. Wait, so if he's actually contradicting the book that he says he's if he's contradicting the book he says he's affirming, then you should reject him? That's interesting, because Muhammad certainly contradicted the book he said he was affirming when he affirmed the Bible, and therefore, what argument are you dismissing? You're dismissing one of Allah's main arguments for Muhammad. Yeah, I got to do something with that, because it seems pretty airtight to me, most of my arguments.
The finding is a man by the name of Dr. Rashad Khalifa. He had lived in Arizona, in Tucson, and he was of Egyptian background, but he was an engineer, and he knew his way around computers. He fed the Quranic data into a computer program, and then he computed things. And he found that a lot of things came out as products of 19. And he exaggerated his claims. Later on, when people checked some of his claims, they found that sometimes the data seems to be fudged a little bit. Some things
quite a bit,
did not actually work out to 19 the way he said. Plus, he made exaggerated claims about himself. He said that he is God's messenger for the current time to bring forth this information to the modern world. And in Sunni Islam, it's not accepted that there will be another messenger after our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And so his personal claims were were not accepted, and also some of his numbers were found to be incorrect. But when all of that dust of debate had settled, some other students of the Quran continued to check and double check the findings and come up with some findings on their own as well. And in the end, we have concluded that even though we reject the claims of Rashad Khalifa himself, there are certain things about the Quran which are undeniable. This is about the book itself,
okay,
and we
go
don't
and give us
reject the book, and we don't reject the
Lay it on
obvious
us.
findings
Lay it on us,
which are
Shabir.
connected with the book.
And what are some of the examples?
Well,
in the
we find
Quran?
that the Quran actually draws our attention to 19 in a verse of the Quran in the 74th chapter, the 30th verse. The Quran says, "Alayha tis'ata ashar," over it are 19. And within the context, what it means is that there were 19 angels guarding hell. So it's not so much about the number 19 itself as a phenomenon in the Quran. It's just
But
talking
its
about
significance.
19 angels.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's talking about hell, and we'll go ahead and look at the passage once Shabir is done, just to get an idea of what the passage is, so everyone gets their bearings. But yeah, this is talking about. It just says over it are 19. That's a verse, and it's talking about these 19. There's some dispute about whether this is like 19 angels were punishing people, 19 commanders over the other angels who are punishing people, because there are hadiths that say there are tons and tons, there are thousands of angels and stuff like that there. So there's confusion about what this is referring to, but it's referring to the number of angels if you read it in context. And Rashad Khalifa apparently just 19, over it or 19, over what? Over it or 19, what is this number 19? And then plugs the number into his computer system and starts getting all these amazing instances of the number 19. And we're going to go see something.
Guarding hell. But Rashad Khalifa took that to be 19, like as a pattern in the Quran. But so we're not saying this means that there is a 19 pattern in the Quran. It means there are 19 angels guarding hell. But at the same time, it led somebody to think that there is a possibility of 19.
What the heck are you laughing at, Thaddeus? This is brilliant. Stop bothering Shabir.
We are finding that 19
I was just
pops
thinking
up
he's
in some very
debunking his
key
own
places.
argument as he's going. Like,
Oh, you mean by
this is
saying,
exactly
oh
what
yeah,
I
and so
would say.
and so basically this
It's
guy
like-
was a heretic and a lunatic and a completely insane person that we all rejected, and then he got killed by our guys. But we plugged the numbers, and he's right on the money on some of it.
And not only that, the verse he went to, it totally doesn't mean that, but
Yeah.
it still works.
Yeah, that's what it's like. He had this obsession with the number 19 because of this verse over to 19, which is talking about 19 angels, and he thinks it's somehow like over everything and this mystical Allah's favorite number and so on, that he's going to put it all over the Quran. And shocker, he went out and found it all over the Quran. Amazing.
I mean, it's funny because the verse is just it talks about hell. It talks about hellfire and the punishment that the disbelievers will receive, and just describes hell, and then says, and over it are 19, which in the Arabic, can be very casually be taken as 19 people or 19 figures, whatever you are talking about at the moment. And in that case, it's 19 angels. That's it.
Yeah, there's a question like in numerology, there's a question of like what could 19 signify, because in numerology they found, they combined all these numbers to get all these other numbers. And I've seen it suggested that it's what happens when you take the 7 planetary bodies that they were aware of back then and add it to the 12 signs of the zodiac. And so 19 is combining these two, but I'd have to see some actual evidence rather than a mere suggestion. But yeah, I've also seen it suggested that some Jews and Christians, based on the verse after that, I've seen it claimed that Jews and Christians were claiming that there were 19 angels, and Muhammad is confirming that. And so this is supposed to give them assurance that he's a true prophet and knows what he's talking about. But yeah, we'll take a look at that in a second.
Our attention to the creator's involvement with the text.
So I know you know more. So what are some of the other examples?
So right here, where it says over it are 19, that's in the 30th verse. The very next verse, the 31st verse of that 74th surah, explains in detail why God made 19 angels to guard hell. And it says that this is in order to strengthen the faith of the believers, and even to give certainty to the people of the book who might be looking at the Quran. And at the same time, this same phenomenon will cause people who want to doubt to say, well, what does God mean by all of this, to deride the information. Now, this verse, which goes into such great detail explaining the wisdom behind the 19 angels, actually comprises 57 words, which is 19 times 3.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and which we know to be a rare phenomenon, that it's a product of 19. Then we go to what preceded this this verse in this surah, and we see that the first 30 verses actually comprise 57 words, 95 words, which is 19 times 5. And the first 19 verses comprise 57 words, which is 19 times 3. And what is even more interesting is that, the passage reads, and then we come to the mention of the word 19. So over it are 19.
Y'all getting this so far?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm riveted.
Okay.
If we count all of the letters from the beginning of that chapter all the way to the word 19, just before the word 19, there are 361 letters, which is 19 times 19. So it's as if we're counting the words and we're saying 19 times 1, 19 times 2, 19 times 3, 19 times 18, 19 times 19.
Right on
and
the
then
dot, and
right
that's
there
where,
it says 19 in a word, right?
Wow.
Tisat Ashar, 2 words which make up the word 19 in Arabic.
All right. So Shabir gives a bunch of examples, but they're like that. But you can find a lot of these examples of, look at this. There's a 19 here. Look at this number of words. It's 38, which is 19 times 2, and this is 57, which is this is there's 57 of this, and so on, and this happens over and over and over again. AP, are you ready to convert back to Islam after realizing there's so many amazing coincidences of the number 19 in the Quran?
I was just going to say that. I feel kind of overwhelmed right now. I don't know what to say. And I feel like I'm going to probably do my shahada after we're done with the stream.
Thaddeus, I know you've got some thoughts on this. Give us the main gist
Yes.
before we go into too much detail. What are your main thoughts on this, just from a mathematical perspective? Because when I'm watching this,
Right.
I'm thinking you could probably do this with just about anything, right? So I could take a book. So here's Ibn Ishaq. If I put this into a computer and I start looking up, you could pick a number, let's say 13. Find everything that can be listed as a multiple of the number 13 in here. I'm guessing I'm going to get thousands of examples of that in a book. But what are you thinking about this argument?
Yeah, so he talked about rolling dice, right? And what he said was technically correct. Like if you roll a 19-sided dice multiple times in a row and you keep getting 19, that would be very unlikely. The problem is the set isn't one and then another and then another. The set is infinite. So it's really roll a 19-sided die, essentially an infinite number of times, and take all of the things that work, ignore everything else, and then just say, wow, it's so amazing that all these things work. Because there's going to be an infinite number of things, because there's an infinite number of ways to manipulate numbers.
So that's so you're saying this could be done pretty easily.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you could, if you were motivated, you could do this with any text whatsoever.
And that's the thing. So it's like people are usually only motivated to do this with the Quran because of Rashad, and it's because of Rashad Khalifa. He came along and he was just a weird guy, and all of a sudden people had access to computers, and he was interested in numbers, and he did this with the Quran, and all of a sudden it becomes a thing in the Quran. I mean, a thing for Muslim apologetics. All right. So do we want to go ahead and check out Yasir Qadhi's response to this, or you guys want to share a thought? Matter of fact, let's go ahead and let's look at the verse in the Quran, just so everyone knows what we're talking about here. All right, so this is Surah 74, and for a little bit of you see right there, 74:30, over it or 19. And this is interesting. This is one of those passages where you have all these little short verses, and then all of a sudden you get one verse that's like, I mean, it seems almost as long as the rest of the entire chapter put together. But let's go back. Okay, so Allah's talking trash about Muhammad's enemies, and he says, I will cast him into hell. So verse 26, I will cast him into hell, and what will make you realize what hell is? It leaves not, nor does it spare aught. It scorches the mortal. Over it are 19. 19 what? Well, he breaks it down. And we have not made the wardens of the fire other than angels. So the idea is that these 19s are some kind of wardens over leaders over the other angels, something like that. And we have not made their number, but as a trial for those who disbelieve, that those who have been given the book may be certain. And so this is why it's suggested that maybe Christians and Jews had some idea about 19 angels, so that, you know, those who have been given the book may be certain. Like, how is 19 going to make us certain? Well, if they already had an idea, well, then Muhammad somehow confirming it means that you should confirm Muhammad, and you can know that he's a prophet. And those who believe may increase in faith, and those who have been given the book and the believers may not doubt, and that those in whose hearts is a disease and the unbelievers may say, what does Allah mean by this parable? Thus does Allah make err whom he pleases, and he guides whom he pleases. And none knows the hosts of your Lord but he himself. And this is not but a reminder to the mortals. And then, of course, Allah starts swearing by the moon, even though Muhammad said that if you swear by anything other than Allah, you're associating it as a partner with Allah and worshiping it. But Allah does that a lot in the Quran. I swear by the moon and the night and the daybreak. He's just swearing by everything. But anyway, this is Surah 74, verse 30. Verse 30 and 31 explains verse 30 for those who are wondering where this mathematical marvel occurs. So just to recap, Rashad Khalifa reads verse 30. Over it are 19. Oh my goodness, this is telling us that the number 19 is going to occur miraculously throughout the Quran. One of the stupidest interpretations of any verse in the history of humanity. But lo and behold, he found the number 19 in a bunch of ways in the Quran, and now Shabir Ali is defending it.
You know what's very funny? In the tafsirs of these verses of 19 and the following verse, in which it says this is a trial for those who believe or disbelieve or whatever it is. In the tafsirs, in Ibn Kathir and many others, what it basically says is that the people of the book, possibly the Jews, were communicating to him, as you briefly said earlier. They were communicating to him something about 19 angels or 19 keepers, and he basically heard that. So this is directly in Ibn Kathir's tafsir. Muhammad basically heard that, and the revelations from Allah came in order for the people of the book to hear and to confirm that it is indeed the same God, the same Allah, who is sending down these revelations. So that is all it is within the context of the ancient tafsirs. But of course, you can sit down and find a miracle with the number here.
Powerful, powerful confirmation of everything Shabir has said.
Yeah.
Shabir also said that this verse explains it in detail. And when you actually read the verse, I couldn't tell that it explained anything.
Yeah, that is a massively confusing verse. Here keep in mind, this is Wyatt. He says drinking game every time Shabir says 19. Wyatt,
12 years old.
Yeah, he's a little kid. What are you talking about? Juice boxes? Yeah, go have a juice box. Go have a yoo-hoo every time Shabir Ali says the number 19. Wyatt.
Hey, look, I have a miracle, by the way. Since we have a math nerd here, self-proclaimed. I'm not saying it. I'm just being very respectful here.
He did. You can call him math nerd. He said it himself.
Okay, wonderful. So I have a miracle here, and I shared this. People in the past had the chance of experiencing this miracle when I first shared it. But so here is the thing. In Arabic, they say that on our hands, these lines, they have like 18 and 81, right? 18 and 81. Look, if you subtract 18 from 81, what do you get? What do you get again?
63.
63, right? Yes, 63. 63 is the age at which Muhammad died. And now you have these two numbers, 6 and 3. Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 years old.
Powerful.
And 3 years later consummated the marriage when she was 9 years old, right? 6, 3, 9. But there is more. There is more. Aisha was 18 years old when Muhammad died. 18 divided by whatever. I don't even. I haven't really thought this through very well. But divided by three, I guess is 6. So there again, you have
Mm-hmm.
6 and 3. Plus, once again, also Muhammad in the Arabic, his name consists of 4 Arabic letters if you count the middle M as twice. No, of 5 letters. Sorry. And Aisha's name in Arabic consists of 4 letters. 4 and 5 together is 9. There you have it again. 3, 6, 9. It appears over and over and over again. You see this, right? I mean, how can you not see
Oh, yeah.
this? This is just confirmation. Yeah.
This is, I don't even know what to do, man. This is powerful
But
stuff.
what is it? Yeah, you said all these numbers, and we got a lot of 9s, but you didn't actually say what it was proving. Proving that Aisha was actually 9, and Muslims who try to reinterpret it get it wrong.
I have no idea. Just yeah.
Well, see,
I
you
have no
got to
idea.
make your claim before you come up with a bunch of coincidences. So then you can claim whatever you claimed ahead of time is proven.
I don't know. I'll come up with something. I'll think about it.
The astronomer here pointed out, Colin from Islam Critiqued has a crazy funny video on mathematical miracles. I remember that, where he was coming up with the age of Aisha in a bunch of different ways. That was classic. Oh, but we do, guys, keep in mind, notice we're not seeing a lot of people defending the mathematical. I mean, I announced it early this morning that we're going to be covering this argument, and there are still Muslims who believe it and so on, but you know, whenever you criticize the argument, you get the brilliant responses occasionally from Muhammad fans. And so here you have it, David Wood's retard children. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, maybe the number of smiley laughing emojis there is some sort of mathematical miracle,
1,
but
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
no, should have done 19, man. Better luck next time. You have not confirmed your prophet's revelations. Welcome to Islamic Apologetics, ladies and gentlemen. All right, should we check out Yasir?
Actually, if you counted the amount of letters that was in that super chat, in that chat, maybe it would have changed something. I don't know, but
yeah, it might be. Yeah, we'll have to do that. Maybe we'll come up with some amazing confirmation here.
Yeah.
All right, so Shabir Ali, I can't think of anyone else who's still defending this argument besides Shabir Ali. But Yasir Qadhi was giving a series of lectures on what the Quran says about hell. And when he's reading this passage, because it's about hell, he did this little detour to discuss this mathematical marvels argument. And Sheikh Yasir Qadhi shares his thoughts. And obviously, since it's such a slam dunk argument, and Shabir says that according to the next verse, this is meant to be a sign for people to give certainty to the people who've received the book and to put other people, in confusion or doubt or something like that. But so obviously Yasir Qadhi is going to agree with Shabir Ali that this is a brilliant argument. Let's go ahead and check this out. This is a shorter clip, but it's powerful confirmation of the
Yes,
miracle.
people in the comment section also added that in addition to all the amazing stuff that I shared, 6, 3, 9. If you have the 3 apart from that, 69 is also part of the whole miracle. So there's just a lot of miraculous stuff.
Powerful, miraculous stuff from the Quran.
By the way, of course, I just have to point out, you're completely unrelated to our talk of Jannah and Jahannam. This verse of 19, عليها 19, it has a very interesting recent history to it, where around 30 years ago, around 30 or so years ago, somebody by the name of Rashad Khalifa here in America, in Arizona, he began propagating a very bizarre theory called the 19 theory of the Quran, the miracle of the 19. And unfortunately, our esteemed Sheikh and teacher, somebody we all love and admire, Sheikh Ahmed Didat, for a while he picked this up, and for a few years he was also propagating this theory until Sheikh Ahmed Didat realized that this person is a very, very dangerous, evil liar. And
notice what he just said, by the way, that this dude in the 70s comes out with this absurd argument, and the most popular da'i in history, with the possible exception of Zakir Naik, just went with it and started using it and spreading it around until he finds out the guy's a heretic, and then concludes that it's a bad argument. Isn't that interesting? Like, if you're on our side of theology, then spout your argument and I'll run around and popularize it for you. And so keep in mind, I mean, the people who were sharing this argument, the Muslims who were spreading this argument around in the 1990s, they didn't get it from Rashad Khalifa. They got it from Ahmed Deedat, who popularized it. And then, of course, turned out they realized the guy's a lunatic. And, oh, now your argument is bad. Like, wait a minute. What?
Yeah, and that's completely accurate, because I actually saw a clip of D-Dot saying that straight up, that he was using the argument until he found out that Khalifa was a heretic, and then he stopped using it. It had nothing to do with the argument being debunked or anything. He just stopped using it because of who brought it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Isn't that interesting? It's like, but you actually see that, and it's somehow ingrained. Like, look, here's the thing. If an argument sucks, I don't care if it's from my biggest hero, the argument sucks. If an argument is good, I don't care if it's from my worst enemy, it's a good argument. But here in Islam, it's if you're on the right side, if you're on the correct side of some issue with us, then your argument is good. And if you're on you're not on the side with us, then your argument is bad, no matter what the argument is. This is interesting. I can imagine these guys like going to math class and the teacher says 2 + 2 is 4, and you go, what? What belief are you? Oh, I'm an atheist. Oh, then we reject your claim that 2 + 2 is 4. Like, wait, what? Anyway.
Fabricator, and so Sheikh Ahmed Deedat rejected this and recanted from this theory of 19. But Rashad Khalifa continued to propagate this theory that there is something of a miraculous 19 repetition of the Quran, and he released a number of books that this word occurs a multiple of 19 times, this letter occurs a multiple of 19 times. Turns out that pretty much all of it was fabricated. Like, who's going to actually sit and count the number of letters or words? So he's fabricating. And so
well, Shabir Ali's not fabricating, so
he was saying that it is so intricate that the Quran is saying that there are 19 repetitions. But of course, the Quran is talking about the angels of Jahannam and how many they are. Correct. He took this verse and he concocted a very elaborate theory that he used computers at the time. He was actually a professor of computer science at the University of Arizona. And because computers were still new, people didn't have access to them. This is the late 70s, early 80s. So
if people had access to it, which other people generally aren't going to be this weird, but they would have found out you could do this with all kinds of books. Pick up a book, use your computer to start figuring out numbers in there, and you'll find this all over the place.
Began propagating this really bizarre theory, and in the process he ended up rejecting the Sunnah in totality. He ended up rejecting some verses of the Quran because they did not fit his theory, and then he eventually claimed that he was the Prophet of Allah to America, and he had a small following here in America, and he called himself submitters rather than Muslims, submitters, and his following, his group was, it caused some issues and fitna for a while until somebody assassinated him in Arizona, and the movement is still around to this day. Very small remnants are still there, the submitters. Anyway, that is not directly related, but you should be aware when I quoted the verse عليها 19 that this is a history that is related to especially Islam in America and what has happened over here.
Somebody killed him.
For no apparent reason.
we know exactly who killed him, but we just won't refer to any of that. All right. So now we have, this is interesting. So we talk about the Dawah Wars. It's just interesting Shabir Ali really thinks, hey, this is a powerful argument. In fact, I can't think of too many arguments that Shabir still uses. He used to use the scientific miracles argument, then he stopped using that one. And then, like, anytime he was asked to defend the Quran, it would be mathematical miracles. And even his fellow Muslims, I'm not talking about, it's like you could give an argument for any position. You could give an argument from evil as an atheist and have other atheists say, I don't think that's very good, or something like that. You could have an argument as a Christian, and other people might say, even other Christians might say, I don't think that's a very good argument, or something like that. But this is like Shabir's go-to argument. And everyone else in Dawah, as far as I can tell, thinks this is a horrible argument.
You know what I find very interesting? Eddie Pixel, who is currently the one who propagates this thing every single day, this number 19 theory, I think he changed the name from submitters to peacemakers. And he basically says it's when the Quran says Muslim or those who submit, when the Quran says those who do Taslim or Muslims, it talks about peacemakers. It means peacemaking. So he also includes that in his translation of the Quran, I think. And he officially uses that, like united peacemakers, Muslims.
Wow.
Which is very funny.
That's awesome. So we have Islam, so those who submit, and then Rashad Khalifa says we'll call our group the submitters, and then Yuxel's no, we're the peacemakers. Hey, and Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." That's interesting. So
I'm pretty sure that's what he based it on, to somehow appeal to Christians.
That was powerful and not dishonest at all.
Yeah,
definitely. So I saw an interesting question in the chat from Villainous. He says, does the 19th theory work on different versions of the Quran? And I say this is interesting because I've actually seen Quranists, right? Quranists are much more open in general about all kinds of things. But in this case, they were using the 19th theory to compare all the versions of the Quran and kind of come back to the original text by comparing different Qurans and finding which verse the 19 works on in this Quran. Oh, that must be the correct version of that verse.
Yeah, that is an issue that's been brought up. Like if you're counting the number of words that lead up to something, well, guess what? Different kirat have sometimes different numbers of words, and they do their verses differently and so on. So what version are you you can't even say Hafs because this guy actually edited the Quran. And came up with his own, had to remove verses out of it to get this to work. But I mean, why is the Hafs version even the most popular? I mean, back in the day, if you go back not too long ago, different versions of the Quran were popular in different areas. Even in Egypt, it was a different version. The Hafs version became the most popular one because the Turks used the Hafs version, and they had the Ottoman Empire, and they spread the use of their version of the Quran. And then, of course, this one gets picked up for the 1924 Cairo edition. And then, of course, also in the age of Dawa, they make up, now there's only one Quran with no variants ever in the entire history of the Quran. And what a disaster, man. I don't even know what to do when people lie so freely. Yeah. The Turks are always a problem, are they not?
Yeah. Terrible people.
Definitely.
And hey, dumb YouTube moderator. We're joking. We got a Turk right in the middle here. We have from Snite here. Have you ever noticed?
You're going to get banned because of this.
Yeah. We could take everything you guys saying about everyone else, but we will not have you criticizing Turks. Snite says, have you ever noticed how many characteristics of the Antichrist the religion of Islam matches? Yes. I have a theory that the Roman Catholic Church is the false prophet and Islam represents the Antichrist, not the literal ones, but like partial fulfillment. Islam is definitely what you might call an Antichrist religion, just going, the Bible, keep in mind, there is an Antichrist, but then there are a bunch of Antichrists. And one of the defining characteristics is rejecting the Son. And, you acknowledge God, but not Jesus as divine. And that's how you spot an Antichrist. So that's one of the ways you spot an Antichrist. So, yes, Islam would certainly be an Antichrist religion. And here we have from Control Yourself. 19 sure is an odd number. Yes, it is.
I like that.
All right, Thaddeus. I've got some. Oh, go ahead. I've got some stuff on this, but I know you've got some thoughts on this as well, Thaddeus. So.
Yeah. So I was going to say, stay tuned. I have a 666 mathematical miracle that proves you right that Islam is the beast.
Don't tease us, Thaddeus. Don't be here teasing us. Go ahead and show us this miracle.
All right. So I did this as part of finding Muhammad in the Bible. So do you want me to do the actual exegesis of Revelation first, or just go straight to the mathematical miracle?
Whatever you would prefer, sir. Whatever you would prefer. You are the math nerd among us.
That is true. All right, I'm going to show.
Oh no, you said among us. Now there will be a bunch of nerds, new generation nerds in the chat because you said Amon. You don't get it. You're too old. Go ahead.
What's going on? Do you want me to share the screen?
Yeah, go ahead and share my screen.
Okay, I'm not good at this. I always this the screen share. I always lose track of. Well, I'm actually good at going to the screen share. It's when I have to go back to everyone on the screen that I run into problems with. So let me get this correct, and here you go.
All right. So the reason it says and even
serious
Revelation
nerd stuff here coming up. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, there's definitely some nerd stuff coming up here, but it's worth your time. And trust me, you'll enjoy the end of it. So the reason it says even Revelation is I was doing a presentation on Muhammad in the Bible, all the correct places he is found, various mentions of false prophets and whatnot. And then what about the book of Revelation? Is Muhammad found there? And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also, it allowed to make war on the saints and conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has been given before the foundation of the world in the book of the life of the Lamb who was slain. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who understands calculate the number of the beast. For it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So that's just the passage, right? Passage that Christians debate all the time. You get all kinds of wacky theories about what 666 means. You can find a million different theories. So let's start with some responsible exegesis of the text with some facts, right? So John, the author of Revelation, he draws heavily on the Old Testament. He expects his audience to understand that he's referencing the Old Testament in various ways. In fact, there's probably like 500 allusions to the Old Testament in the book of Revelation. The number 666 is better understood as a symbol than a name. Yes, it uses the word name, but when you look in context, it's not really about a name. So the academic theory that this is about Nero, the emperor of Rome, doesn't really hold up to scrutiny for that reason, and because you have to manipulate Nero's name to make it add up to 666. However, 666 is found in 1 Kings 10:14 and the parallel verse in 2 Chronicles. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. So the extravagant description of the income of Solomon, who's known for wisdom, and right, John said, this takes wisdom to understand this, is arguably the turning point in his career as he seeks foreign wives and political alliances to protect the wealth. The mark of the beast and the characteristic of the reign of the beast is economic. So you see a thematic connection here between Solomon, whose kingdom ends up falling because of his greed, and the mark of the beast. And then I said, this might be a bit like what Saudi Arabia is doing today, where they're trying to buy the world with their oil wealth. Now, we go from the serious exegesis to at least somewhat proper exegesis. So the previous verse in 1 Kings, the one before the verse of 666, mentions the Queen of Sheba. And King Solomon gave to the Queen of Sheba all that she desired. So she turned back and went to her land with her servants. Sheba was probably the ruler of the Sabaean kingdom, and the Sabaean kingdom is down here at southern Arabia. Since Muslims always tell us that Kedar in the extreme northern Arabia it is a hint that it's about Muhammad, well, then Saba must be about Muhammad too, because it's right next door to Mecca. It's practically the same geographic region, a lot closer to where Muhammad was than Mecca. And indeed, let's pretend that the Islamic narrative about Mecca is true. That is this great trade capital, that, it's oldest and greatest city, and all the trade of the regions going through it. Well, then, if that's true, then Sheba surely went through Mecca on her way to and from Israel. And the exact region of Sheba, so on the one map, it was kind of, down here. On this one, it's over here, because the exact region of the geography is not that known. And if this one's correct, then it actually includes Mecca within the King of Saba. Now we have some fun, right? So that was the end of the responsible exegesis. But now we get to the real fun stuff, where we find the mathematical miracle of 666 that Allah has chosen to encode in his holy book. Surah 66:6. I mean, it's 666. He's not even trying to hide it, right? O you who have believed, protect yourselves and your families from a fire whose fuel is people and stones, over which are angels, harsh and severe. They do not disobey Allah in what he commands them, but to do what they are commanded. Incidentally, here's the 19 angels in this verse, 666. So Allah claims he's in charge of hell in this verse. He claims that the people, or the fallen angels of hell, are not disobeying him, that they're following his commands. So Allah claims that he's in charge of hell in verse 666. Coincidence? Perhaps. Let's continue on. There's two 666s in the Quran, right? There's also Surah 666. But your people have denied it, meaning the Quran. Well, it is the truth. Say, I, meaning Muhammad, am not over you as a manager. So here we see that Allah has coded the entirety of the Islamic Trinity, Allah, Muhammad, and Quran, in just these two verses that are marked by 666. It's a mathematical miracle. But that's not all. There's more. If we start at the beginning of the Quran and we count 666 verses, then we continue reading on, we find, O men, a proof has now come from you to your Lord. We have sent down to you a manifest light. Does this sound familiar? It should, because it's a lot like Isaiah 14:12. How you are fallen from heaven, i.e. sent down, O day star, son of dawn, i.e. manifest light. So the manifest light being sent down from heaven, cast out of heaven in Isaiah 12:14, none other than Satan. And by the way, the previous verse, number 666, claims that Allah is the only helper of those who are disdained and who are arrogant, i.e. people who are rebellious against God. The only helper of them is Allah, according to the verse. So a 19 miracle can happen once every 19 verses by chance, shockingly enough. But a 666 miracle, hey, that's only 1 out of a 666 chance, 35 times as unlikely as a 19 miracle. And what are the odds that the unholy Trinity is covered by only the two 666 verses? There's only those two verses, and they cover all of the Islamic Trinity. And with a bonus description of the fall of Satan connected to verse number 666. This is all beyond comprehension, or something like that. So Islam is the beast by the principle of mathematical miracles, and therefore Allah is Satan.
It's over for Islam.
Well, now you all have it. I don't even know how to argue with that. Look, you know, it's weird. You do get comments. So notice a comment from a Muslim friend here. He says, "Deal with the scriptures properly, please."
Well, which scriptures, dear Muslim?
What? That's kind of our point. That's kind of the point. When you do the gymnastics that Rashad Khalifa and Shabir Ali do with numbers and so on, you can prove kind of anything you want. You could even prove, you know, that Muhammad's an antichrist and so on, and the miracle of the number 666. So do you guys get the point that you shouldn't be doing this because you can kind of prove anything?
Yes.
Yes. Let me
You know what this reminds me of? This whole talk of 666. Last month, there was this whole thing in New York because of the wildfires. There was the sky turning orange, red, and at that same time, this new game came out, which is Diablo 4, and it was being like advertised in New York. And there's this photo of Diablo being on a billboard, and it says Diablo 4, welcome to hell, New York. And then there's the date of it, like 6/6/23 to do 666. And then in the back of it, you see the sky totally.
So a more accurate prophecy than anything Muhammad ever came up with.
Yeah, they couldn't have chosen a better way to advertise the game. You know?
Yeah. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up one example here, and then we'll watch a bit of a Sheikh Asim al-Hakim on this. But, so this is from an article that was a response to Rashad Khalifa a long time ago when this argument was circulating. This is from an actual mathematician. And he describes the argument and some of the background and so on. But look at that paragraph on the right side there. So he tells you where you can get Yüksel's. He mentions Yüksel's version of the argument and so on, says where you can get it, and tells everyone where you can investigate Khalifa's argument more. But then he does something fun, and he just says, hey, if I go looking around for the number 19, where can I find it? Where can I find the number 19 if I'm really going around just looking for multiples of the number 19? And here in this paragraph on the right, you can see he says, now for some 19 number juggling, supplied in part by correspondent Monty Zerger. 19 is, of course, a prime. It is equal to 10 squared minus 9 squared. So 10 squared, 100 minus 9 squared. You get, so that's 100 minus 81, so 19. To 1 squared plus 3 squared plus 3 squared, and to 3... I'm having trouble seeing some of the numbers because they're small on this screen. 3 cubed minus 2. Okay, I can't read the exponents there. The number
David
7.
Can't even read.
Yeah, I can't even read on this tiny computer screen I have in front of me. The number 1729, or 19 times 91, was involved in a famous incident between the British mathematician G.H. Hardy and his friend Ramanujan. Ramanujan, he was cool. He was a mathematical prodigy who he was just working as a clerk somewhere. So he's kind of their Einstein. But he was just working as a clerk somewhere and sent a bunch of his calculations to the British mathematician G.H. Hardy. And G.H. Hardy thought Ramanujan was insane because the guy was claiming to have solved all these problems and had come up with his own independent solutions to some of the things that had been solved, but he was solving other things that hadn't been solved. So he thought the guy was just a lunatic for claiming he'd done all this till he started going through it. And he's like, oh my goodness, this guy's just crushing it here. And so anyway, he became their Einstein. So discussion between these guys, the Indian number theory genius, having taken a taxi to visit Ramanujan in a hospital, Hardy remarked that the taxicab number 1729 was a dull number. Ramanujan immediately replied, no, it is an interesting number. It is the smallest number expressible as the sum of 2 cubes in 2 different ways, 12 cubed plus 1 cube and 10 cubed plus 9 cubed. Note that the digits of 1729 add to 19. In 1989, a multiple of 9, it was proved, scroll down here, it was proved that every integer is the sum of no more than 19 fourth powers. The smallest number requiring 19 such powers is 79, the sum of 4 fourth powers of 2 and 15 fourth powers of 1. The repeating decimal of 1/19th is the 2 times 9 equals 18-digit number, so you get that, and that's just going to repeat over and over again. Multiply it by any number from 2 through 18, and the product has the same 18 digits in the same cyclic order. Multiplying by 19 produces a row of 2 times 9 equals 18 nines. The constitutional amendment giving women the vote was the 19th. The 19th hole in golf is the bar, where golfers sink drinks like they sink putts in 18 holes. Every 19 years, all phases of the moon fall on the same days of the week throughout the year. The Psalms is the Bible's 19th book. Psalm 19 opens with, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. The numbers most often encountered in the Bible are 12 and 7. They're reflected in our calendar with its 7 days to a week and 12 months to a year. The sum of the two numbers is 19. And he has this mathematical figure. Figure 1 on page 17 reproduces a thing of strange beauty. The 19 cells hold integers 1 through 19. Every straight row of cells adds to 38, or twice 19. It would make a wondrous amulet for the Baha'is. So what he's talking about with the figure up here is, let's see, let's go up here. That figure right there, so any straight line adds up to 38, or double 19. Isn't that amazing? It's a miracle. So that's that's a mathematician just saying, what happens if I actually deliberately go looking for the number 19? And I doubt he spent too much time on it, but he found out they're all over the place. Guess what? You could do similar things with the number 13, with the number 15, with the number 17, whatever you want to do. If you go out looking for it, you'll find it. You'll find it in a book. If you want to take the number 23 and find all sorts of multiples of 23 in books, and you're going to say, anytime I get a multiple of 23, computer, tell me about it. Guess what? You're going to get a bunch of them. Somehow this is the main proof that Shabir Ali has for the authority of the Quran, the divine inspiration of the Quran. All right, so we have one more video clip, and then I guess we'll have one more video clip. So from Sheikh Asim al-Hakim on this, just so we get an extra opinion. And then Thaddeus, I've heard that you can also find the miracle of the number 19 in the Book of Mormon.
That's correct.
Interesting. So that would mean that Shabir Ali, if he takes the argument seriously, will have to convert to Mormonism, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's check out Sheikh Asim al-Hakim on this argument. And he's basically going to give the similar idea that we heard from Yasir Qadhi. Namely, this is being rejected. And again, Shabir is the only proponent I can think of who's still defending this.
Is it correct to believe in the numerical or other such miracles of the Quran? For example, the ayah in chapter 39, which talks about pregnancy, has 39 letters, and it takes approximately for women to give birth. What is the ruling on this type of deductions from the Quran? This is problematic, Aqib. When you say, is it correct to believe in the numerical or other such miracles of the Quran? Definitely believing in the miracles of Quran is part of our religion. Anyone who rejects this is not a Muslim. But is there numerical miracles? People.
I actually like how he breaks this down. He says, if there's a miracle in the Quran, you as a Muslim have to believe it. But is this a miracle in the Quran? Because if it's not, then no, you're not supposed to believe it.
Usually tend to find it difficult to distinguish between what are subtleties and miracles. Any person who compiles or writes a book can insert in that book a certain number of things and then claim afterwards that this is miraculous, which is not.
Now, that part's interesting too, because he's pointing out that if someone wanted to put the number 19 in a bunch of different ways in his book, he could. The point we've been making is you could do this. You'll always be able to find number 19s all over the place in a book if you look hard enough and you use a computer to find tons and tons of patterns. Hey, find every instance where this word is used 19 times and find every place where the number of verses is some multiple of 19 or something like that. You could find those kinds of things all over the place. But he's pointing out, hey, what if you did find a number all over the place or some sort of amazing numerical correspondence somewhere? Well, how would you know that it's not a person who's interested in numbers doing that kind of thing, like deliberately putting them in there? But he's going to give some examples. Oh, go ahead, Thaddeus.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually does happen in the Bible in several places, but most famously Genesis 1:1. There's an extraordinary amount of sevens in that you can manipulate all kinds of ways and get 7. And most people think that was done purposely by the author, that it's not just some weird coincidence. But they don't think it's, miraculous from God. They just think that the author of the text took a lot of effort to encode the number 7 in the verse.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the type of miracles that the Quran contains, first of all.
Interesting. So he's saying this
Second
isn't even
of all,
the kind of
people
miracles
have gone so deep in this that they started making up things according to their whims and desires. So they started to say, for example, that the word day in the Quran is 365.
Hey, I've heard that from a bunch of Muslims, and I've heard that it's a miracle. Hey, Thaddeus,
It's
I don't know if
very
you saw.
easily debunked. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the comment, Thaddeus, but we recently did a live stream, and I had mentioned that that it was suggested that the word day occurs 365 times, and this is amazing. How could this happen? And a Muslim comments who's like, David Wood is lying. David Wood is lying. On the Islamic calendar, it's 360 days, not 365. It's like, yeah, I know you guys have a lunar calendar, but that's not what we're talking about. That is your miracle. Don't. When I repeat what you guys say is your miracle, don't come pointing a finger at me.
Times, which is the days of the year. And they say that the month in the Quran is only mentioned 12 times, which is 12 times in it. And
I've heard that a bunch of times too. Interesting. I wonder if Sheikh Asim al-Hakim is going to point out how powerful this argument is.
all of this is bogus, is not true.
Wow.
Because they selected the words that refers to day and neglected other days.
Yeah, so what happens is they I think the word day actually occurs like 400 and sometimes. What they do is they okay, we won't count the plurals, we won't count certain forms of the word, we'll only count the nominative in this form and so on. Oh my goodness, we got 365.
And they did not include it because it did not fit the 365 days of theirs. Likewise, in the case of seeking refuge from the shaitan. Likewise, in the mentioning of the heaven and hell, the angels and the devils, all of these are bogus and not true. The miracles found in the Quran is what Allah challenged people to try and manufacture something like it, which nobody could. Allah challenged them to produce 10 chapters. They failed. Allah challenged them to produce 1 chapter. And they failed. No one could do that for the past 15 centuries.
That's the miracle. I challenge everyone to compose a symphony like Mozart. If you can't, you have to admit that it's the inspired music of God. You can't do it because you're not as good as Mozart. Interesting.
Correct.
And no one will ever be able to do that. But to include...
No one will ever be able to do it because we're the judges of the contest. We're the judges of the contest here.
certain numbers, and not only that, to build on it, allegation that, okay, the number 19 has great significance in Islam.
Here we go.
Because it's found in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And the multiplication of it, you find it here, you find it there. All of this is nonsense and not true. Which led some ignorance to say that it's mentioned in the Quran through numerical miracles, they say, when the state of Israel would be demolished. And they said that we can tell when the day of judgment is by doing some calculations. And recently, they said that 9/11 is mentioned in the Quran as well. All of this is fabrication and not true, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best.
Notice he's saying it's all fabrication, it's bogus, and yet even Ahmed Deedat ran with this. So I mean, their greatest da'i of all time just heard it and ran with it. Didn't examine it critically, heard it. Oh, this is something that supports my religion, so I'll just spread it all around the world. Oh, the guy who gave us this argument's a total lunatic, and oh, he's been killed. Oh, okay. Okay, I guess we can reject this. Too late. People were still using it long after the argument was debunked. And notice, have you guys noticed this keeps happening in Islam? They'll make something will get made up in the 70s. Then their guys will popularize it. Then they will eventually admit it's totally bogus. It was all made up. It's a joke. But your popular Muslim still believes it because they did such a great job lying to everybody. So you still have your average Muslim thinks one Quran perfectly preserved right down to the letter. Scientific miracles in the Quran, all made up. It's all made up. It's a lie. And what really shocks me is, okay, Ahmed Deedat, scientific miracles. That's been debunked. It was a lie made up in the 70s and then popularized by Ahmed Deedat and Zakir Naik. Numerical miracles. That was made up in the 1970s, totally bogus, made up, and then spread by people like Ahmed Deedat. Oh, that's been exposed as bogus. And even, Yasir Qadhi and Sheikh Asim al-Hakim and a bunch of others, Bilal Phillips and so on, they all have posted videos saying, hey, this is nonsense. It's like, how does it never, ever occur to the fans of these guys? Wait a minute. If they keep giving me arguments that turn out to be completely bogus, why do I believe there are other arguments? Like, I mean, it would seem at the very least you'd say, okay, if Ahmed Deedat is defending an argument, and we know that Ahmed Deedat would use any argument if he thought it confirmed Islam, even if it's completely bogus, that means when I hear something from Ahmed Deedat, I need to be very careful and make sure and confirm it myself, because I cannot trust the man. He is too sloppy and too gullible with his evidence. But notice, him and Zakir Naik, these are like the kings of dawah. These are their patterns. We need the new Ahmed Deedat. We need the new Zakir Naik. And these are the sloppiest, most gullible people in the world. They'll take anything that they think confirms their book and they'll spread it to people and leave it to later da'is to try and clean up the mess. And that's dawah. AP, what are your thoughts on all this before I?
Well, I think it's powerful stuff, and I don't know. I mean, I will not declare anything nonsensical and debunked until I hear other dawah say that it has been debunked and that it's all complete nonsense. So I'm neutral right now, and I don't know. Yeah, I'll see.
Okay, so the AP is maintaining an open mind about this argument. What is this? Do you know what this is about, AP? If you think seeing Sheikh Asim talk about the number 19 is funny, wait till you see him pick up a watermelon. He should have gone seedless. I don't know what this is about. You know what this is about? It's got a kissing.
No.
Did he kiss a watermelon?
No.
I don't know what this is about.
I don't know.
Do you know what this is about, Thaddeus?
I don't specifically, but did he comment on the famous watermelon ruling, where for some reason in fiqh they've made a ruling on whether or not you're allowed to have sex with a watermelon?
No, did he do something about that? Guys, send us some links if there's something that we need to look into about Sheikh Asim and a watermelon. All right, so that's most of the stuff we wanted to get to. But going along with our claim that you can find these mathematical patterns elsewhere, Thaddeus, I understand that you said that you could also find patterns like this in other books, including the Book of Mormon. Is that correct?
Yes, so this is definitely correct. So I did have a Muslim on my channel who was adhering to the mathematical miracle, the 19th specifically argument. And so I challenged him, what happens if I can find 19s in the Book of Mormon? And he definitely was very upset and dodged the question. Didn't want it. He's not very bright. He didn't understand why I was bringing up the Book of Mormon. I mean, I'm just being honest here. He didn't even understand why I was bringing it up. He's like, I don't care about the Book of Mormon. Why are you bringing the Book of Mormon up? But I went ahead and I did it. So what I did.
And by the way, that what you did right there is massively important. In fact, if you take nothing else away from this discussion, take away what Thaddeus just pointed out. Hey, you have to believe in the Quran because there are all these multiples of 19 in different ways in the Quran. That's why you should believe in the Quran. And the response is, okay, if I can find these multiples of 19 in some other book, are you going to say that it's the Word of God? No. Okay, well, why are you telling me to do that with your book, right? Why are you telling me to do it? If the answer is yes, that would be one thing. Then you would actually believe in your argument. But that's strange because there is this sort of unwritten rule. If we can use some claim to insist that the Quran is from God, then use it, and all of you people should believe in it. But if you could do the exact same thing with some other book, no, that's no reason to believe in the Book of God. You'll see that over and over again. This means that the Quran is from God. Okay, I can do the exact same thing with this other book. That's no evidence at all. That's no evidence for that other book. So if you wonder what we're talking about, if you take the mathematical marvels in the Quran, you can find, one, the Quran is a scientific disaster. It's a catastrophe. But supposing you found something that is scientifically accurate in there, guess what? You could find much more amazing stuff in Aristotle, something like that, who's 1,000 years before Muhammad. You can find all kinds of things. So that should be a good question. In order to clarify what the argument is, it's, okay, well, if I can show you something even better over here, are you going to believe in that? And if the answer is no, you need to clarify why. Why are you saying I should believe in your book if you can show this, when I say, well, if I can show you something even better than that in this other book, and you're saying, no, I wouldn't take that as any kind of evidence at all. You're kind of exposing some of the that the argument isn't really, hey, based on this evidence, you should believe it. It's like, oh, well, I already believe it, and I'm just looking for reasons to tell you to throw in your face, even though I don't really believe these reasons are good reasons. So anyway, just wanted to point out that is very important stuff. But go ahead, Thaddeus.
Well, you're just spreading ignorance, right?
So,
Because
Yeah, you are.
the obvious reason is that the Quran is the book of Allah. So therefore, if it's
right.
in the Quran,
So it only counts when it's in the Quran.
Yeah.
I've had Muslims say that kind of thing, and they don't care if the same thing happens in other books. But as long as because those books aren't inspired, those books don't claim to be from God. So therefore, it doesn't matter if they contain the same scientific knowledge or whatever.
And you can modify that by just saying, okay, what if Aristotle had said, I got this from God? Would you then believe? And of course, you're not, just because it's not.
Weren't there several Greek philosophers who claimed to be like divine or prophets?
Yeah, people did. I mean, they had. I mean, matter of fact, you could go that. I mean, these guys believe. Some of these guys, like even Socrates, he had his daimon, the spirit that would communicate with him occasionally, and so on. So you could take something by Socrates and say it's divine revelation. But go ahead, Thaddeus.
Yeah. So just real quick, the same individual, I actually did get him to agree to. Once I eventually explained, I asked what 19 miracle, if I could replicate it, would you accept as disproof of the ideas of 19s? And he said, he gave this really stupid one where you take the verse, the surah, and then the number of verses, and then so you put 1, and then I don't know what is it, like 9 verses or whatever, and then you put 2 and 227 or whatever number of verses it actually is, and so on. And you put that all together as one long number, and apparently it's a multiple of 19. And he said, it's like a 4,000 digit number. How in the world could it be a multiple of 19? I'm like, well, 1 out of every 19 numbers is a multiple of 19. So that's a 5% chance or so. But then he disappeared, unfortunately. He hasn't been calling in anymore because I think he's pretty afraid. He's afraid of the math. But anyway, so I did take up his challenge. I did take up my challenge on the Book of Mormon. And I went to the 19th. So Book of Mormon is actually divided into books, interestingly enough. But I went to the first book, which is First Nephi. First Nephi. I went to the 19th chapter and looked at the 19th word. So that's the very first thing I tried, right? And it happens to be the word I. And there are 38 I's in the chapter. So it's a multiple of 19. So the 19th word of the 19th chapter of the Book of Mormons has a 19 miracle. And I didn't stop there. So the whole chapter, the whole 19th chapter, has 5,586 characters, a multiple of 19. And then I started looking at individual words. But I didn't just pick words arbitrarily. Like, I mean, the word I is a multiple of 19. That's not what I did. I looked at words that not Muslims, Mormons would consider significant. So this particular chapter is about the prophet Nephi making engraved plates. Joseph Smith claimed to have found engraved plates in the earth and translated the Book of Mormon miraculously from these Egyptian plates. Well, I looked at the word engraven and the word plates, and they add up to 19. There's 19 engraven plates in the 19th chapter of the Book of Mormons. Then I looked at his prophet. I did try other things, to be clear. Not everything I tried worked, right? But I'm only telling the ones that work.
That's how it works with the mathematical miracle in the Quran, right? If you add something up and it's not a multiple of 19, you ignore it. And if you add it up and it is a multiple of 19, then you use it, and you just keep doing that. And you eventually end up with a collection of multiples of the number 19, and everything else you've dismissed.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to be deceptive and say that these are the only things I looked at, but everything I looked at seems to be significant. And you don't know all the things I tried that didn't work, right? So everything I looked at doesn't seem arbitrary. So his plus prophet 19 times, record of the prophet 209 times, which is a multiple of 19, by God 19 times, written for all people by their Lord 76 times, a multiple of 19. Nephi, prophet of the engraven plates. So the book is about Nephi, a prophet of Mormonism, getting engraven plates. So that phrase, if you add up all the words of it, 228 times, also a multiple of 19. Written upon engraved plates, Also 228 characters for that one. Now, some of a different stripe. I got bored with doing ones that are just based on words and went for some other ones. So the first mention of plates, from the first mention of the plates to the second mention, inclusive, are 304 characters, also a multiple of 19. Muslims often do that in the Quran. They say between the first mention and the last mention, or first and second mention, or whatever, of two words is this many words or this many characters, and that's the temperature of the sun. Therefore, this is encoding the temperature of the sun in the Quran, right? That's actually a real one. From the first mention of sun to the last is approximately the same number of verses as the temperature of the sun in Kelvin, surface of the sun. Anyway, from the first to the last mention of plates, there are 1,102 words, also a multiple of 19. The first verse of the chapter, and it came to pass that the Lord commanded me, wherefore I did make plates of ore, that I might engraven upon them the record of my people. If you take out and, because it doesn't make any sense to start the chapter with and, you got 133 characters.
And by the way, notice you're just saying, if you take this word off, then you still get the 19. So you've seen them do that, right? Like they'll say, if we treat these two words as one word, then we get the number 19 and stuff. They keep doing that in their amazing calculations.
Verse 19, wherefore I speak unto all the house of Israel, if it so be that they should obtain these things, 95 characters, also a multiple of 19. So there you go. I could get more, right? I could do more, but I stopped there. I figured that was enough to prove the point. And every one of them isn't like just some random arbitrary word that occurs 19 times or whatever. Every one of them is in principle important to the Mormon faith, and it all works as long as you ignore all the manipulations I did to make it work.
Well, that seals the deal. I'm going to get my magic underwear and start a new life as a Mormon.
So notice, everyone, here's the takeaway. If you hear Shabir Ali say, here's a bunch of 19s in the Quran that we've added up, and look at this number of words and this number of verses and so on, and we're pointing out you could kind of do that all over the place. If you take that argument seriously, then you should accept the Book of Mormon. Are you Muslims going to accept the Book of Mormon on the basis of Thaddeus's discussion of the number 19? He said he could give more. And all of the examples he gave, I have to say, are at least as good as the ones I hear from the Quran. They're at least as good. I don't find them persuasive at all. But if I were to find the ones in the Quran even remotely interesting, the examples that Thaddeus gave from the Book of Mormon are every bit as interesting, if not more. And he said he could find even more, just as, however many Shabir Ali gives, he would obviously say that he could give more. So you Muslims who are watching, how much evidence do you think Thaddeus just gave for the Book of Mormon, for the divine inspiration of the Book of Mormon? How much evidence did he just give? I would consider it none. He gave no evidence at all for the divine origin of the Book of Mormon. So notice, if you say, that's no evidence for the Book of Mormon, but when you do the exact same thing with the Quran, it's conclusive mathematical proof that the Quran is from God. Does it not occur to you that bias is the factor there and not something amazing or miraculous? Those are just my thoughts. All right, guys. Well, that's everything we wanted to get through. Any final thoughts on this? AP, again, you ready to convert to Islam based on anything pulling you back to Islam? How powerful do you think this is compared to all the other awesome arguments for Islam that we've examined in the past?
It is pretty powerful, but I'm still going to wait for Ali Dawa to say something about this.
All right. So we're going to have to see Ali Dawa on this. Thaddeus, math, nerd, Thaddeus. So you don't think there's much to this argument?
No, I don't think that there is much to it, but I do understand the appeal, actually, because even though I knew it would work, right? Even though I knew going to the Book of Mormon, 19th chapter, etc., I would be able to find the patterns. It was still kind of freaky that engraved plates, right, is 19 times, when that's like the key phrase to Mormonism. And I think it was literally the first phrase I tried. So I understand why people do this. And this is actually a mark of human intelligence, that we're so good at perceiving patterns that we tend to see patterns that don't actually exist because we're intelligent. It's not a mark of stupidity to see these kinds of things and think they're interesting. It's actually a mark of being a human being, which is why we need to actually rigorously mathematically investigate it. And the problem is there's no objective criteria.
Especially David.
Because, yeah. Because, as I said, the set is infinite. You can manipulate texts, you can manipulate numbers in basically an infinite number of ways. Maybe at some point it becomes so convoluted that you don't, it doesn't look interesting anymore. But in principle, there are an infinite number of ways to manipulate the text. So you actually need something mathematically rigorous, and you're definitely not going to find that, because the examples aren't chosen because they are improbable, really. Same idea when I look into the types of things like the days of the number of days being 300, word day being 365 times. Even if it works, that one doesn't work. But some of them, kind of work. But they're not chosen because they're improbable. I've tried to calculate some of the probability of some of them, and they're not really improbable. I could find much more improbable things in the Quran. I guarantee it. They're chosen because they sound neat, because they have this appeal because, the word day being there 365 times, that's pretty cool. And now it'd be no less or more likely than the word day being there 430 times, or whatever the exact number is. Both are equally improbable, but it sounds cool, right, for it to be exactly 365. And there's thousands and thousands of things in the world that have a definite number, that have a number associated with them. So you only look at the ones that look cool, and you ignore all the rest of them. And that's where the miracle comes, is human creativity. That's the real miracle.
Yeah. So my takeaway, everyone, would be if you're using an argument that could be used if you're using an argument for the divine inspiration of your book that could be used to defend the divine inspiration of pretty much any book, you probably need a better argument. That would be one. And the other takeaway is if your top apologists are using completely bogus arguments that later apologists are having to admit are an embarrassment and we need to stop using them, there should be some sort of light switch moment at some point where you realize, I can't trust something just because these guys are saying it. I need to go look this up myself and verify it for myself, because for some reason, your da'is are the biggest bunch of liars I've ever seen in my life. I've been to prison. I've never met people who lie as freely with so little concern as your dawah guys. And it's because they believe, even if they're lying in order to guide you to the truth of Islam, well, they're doing you a favor by lying to you. Okay, so you can do with that whatever you want. But if the point is, if people believe it's okay to lie to you and to deceive you for your good, what that really means is you shouldn't trust something just because they're saying it. You should say, okay, anything one of these guys tells me, I cannot believe it until I verified it, because these guys are compulsive liars. And one thing we'll be seeing in future live streams is, what's amazing is all these guys are calling each other liars, right? So this da'i is calling this guy a liar, and this da'i is calling this guy a liar, and that da'i is calling that guy. They're all calling each other liars and exposing and giving reasons. Look at all these lies these guys do. It's fine when I lie, but this guy shouldn't be lying to them. I'm the one who gets to lie here. And they're all liars, and they're all exposing each other as lies. And somehow, I mean, how did you end up with something this massively dysfunctional? Might have something to do with your religion.
Yep.
Check that out.
I kind of sympathize with the whole 19 thing a little bit, because I'm 19 years old, and it kind of
you act like you're 19,
and you are 57, which is also a multiple of.
I feel like I'm 57.
Anyway, yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we will catch you all next time, because the Dawagandists are going to keep making things up. They're going to keep lying. We're going to keep exposing their lies. their followers are going to keep complaining that we're exposing the lies until the Dawah guys finally admit that they were lying. And then for some reason, their fans will be totally fine with it. Oh, you lied, then you lied, then you lied, then you lied, then you lied. Okay, tell us what to believe now. For some reason, it boggles my mind, but that is the world of Dawah. All right, so there's going to be no shortage of material for us to cover in the future, because now that they're admitting that all their old arguments are lies, now they have to come up with new lies to replace the old lies. And we'll be here because it's getting easier and easier to expose the lies because people are catching on. Again, you go back 15 years, those of you who are in the chat know insanely far more than even people who are a bit interested in Islam knew back 15 years ago. Knowledge was so scarce. You guys can rip this stuff apart. And so that's the problem, is Dawah only works in an atmosphere of ignorance, and the atmosphere of ignorance is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And their Dawah isn't working. They're acknowledging that it's failing. And it's a matter of time before you get a complete, total, utter collapse. Mark my words. You have 24 hours.